And we're live. Thank you so much for being on here, Pratyusha. Um, c- could
Thank
you
you for
tell
having
the
me.
thank you. Could you tell the audience, who you are and kind of highlight the work that you're doing at Nemo? Yeah.
Hi, my name is Pratyusha, and I am the co-founder of a medtech company based in Hyderabad. We are called Nemo Care Wellness. So we are predominantly an impact-driven company working in neonatal care, where we are trying to leverage the best of wearable technology to provide optimal care for bottom of the pyramid, especially in developing countries. So what we see usually in developing countries when the healthcare delivery at the last mile is not optimum, the most vulnerable population take the big hit, and that is typically the maternal care, neonatal care, and geriatric care. These are the most vulnerable population that take a hit, and in within that, me and my co-founder Manoj had the expertise of working with newborn care and maternal care through our career as a technologist and a product designer. Um, so we came together and had this interesting problem at hand. We did a user research for almost close to 8 months as a part of a fellowship program at IIT Hyderabad. It is called CFHE. In that massive immersion in the 8 months, during the 8 months, we spent a lot of time touring various districts of South India, talking with doctors in different sorts of clinical settings. We were interacting with a lot of parents, a lot of healthcare workers who are working at the last mile, at the bottom of the pyramid. So during this time, we had very interesting stories that we had come about, especially in the districts in Telangana. So one such incident was where we had this very, a 20-bedded pediatric hospital, which was run by Dr. Jagdishwar. And uh, in there, we had seen him use the limited resources he had. Uh, when I say limited, especially compared to clinical settings of a typical NICU in UK or the US, this is very minimal. I mean, I can't even explain how minimal it is. So typically in an NICU that can accommodate about 40 babies, they would be overflowing with about 60 to 80 babies.
Oh,
So mothers or caretakers would be holding these very preterm or very fragile newborns and sitting outside in the corridor holding them and trying to monitor them because there's no beds available. And each of these incubators that you see, which is designed for one baby, will have typically two or three babies fitted into it, um,
oh
so that
wow.
it can be monitored and be provided with warmth. So these are the clinical settings I'm talking about, which we saw. And a typical NICU where one baby is hooked onto these multiple monitors to be able to monitor their vitals and for the healthcare worker to understand what's happening with the baby. That's a far-fetched dream for most of the clinical settings that we are working with. So these babies, there are about two, three of them in one incubator, one warmer, and not all of them are hooked on to a vitals monitor, a typical vitals monitor, which is telling the heart rate or the oxygenation, blood oxygenation of a baby. So there would be one or two working monitors in a clinical setting, which has about 20 to 40 babies. So they're put on the most critical babies, and the rest of them are visually monitored by the nurse, so
Mm,
that they can catch any of these distress conditions that the baby is going through.
that's
So
yeah.
yeah, so it's a stark contrast as compared. So obviously, that's a direct correlation to the chances of survival of a newborn as compared to where it's born. So if it's born in the US, it has a chance of a typical preterm baby has a chance about of 95% to survive, 95 to
Mm,
97%, and here it's the exact opposite.
mm,
So what we see is the doctors and the nurses who are managing these clinical settings are doing an incredible job of actually visually monitoring these babies, working overtime, basically the fatigue that comes in of taking care of a newborn. If you have one newborn at home, you're having sleepless nights trying to just monitor them, right?
mm,
And these healthcare workers are doing the same thing with 20 odd newborns, and all of them are sick newborns.
mm,
And they're doing the best they can within the limited resources that they can afford, because they still have to provide that affordable healthcare to their patients, right?
mm,
So obviously they can't afford these huge, vitals monitors, and they can't invest that much money into a clinical setting. So that was the place where the idea of coming up with something affordable, something that can easily be deployed in such a clinical setting, can easily tell a healthcare worker when a newborn is in a distress condition.
mm.
This
And
was, yeah.
yeah, and are you referring to like premature babies that you saw in that particular ICU?
Yes. So babies in the ICU are either premature, they're either clinically
Okay.
low birth weight,
Mm,
or they have some sort of birth trauma, or
mm,
they might have some sort of congenital disorder that they're born with. So it could be any one of these four things, and that's usually why they're in the NICU. But if
mm,
they are in the NICU, the simple thing is that their vitals have to be monitored, and they have to be under 24-hour surveillance. And if they're going through any of the distress conditions, so most of the clinical um, illnesses manifest as distress conditions, which are either hypothermia or apnea or respiratory distress.
mm,
So they manifest as these three basic distress conditions. So when we started out, obviously the problem was huge, but we had to start somewhere, right? So we started with the simple thing that let's just monitor the vitals of each baby. And when we identify a distress condition like apnea or hypothermia or respiratory illness, uh, can we design a simple mechanism or a more reliable mechanism to alert the healthcare worker who is responsible for them, so that she can provide immediate care while she is at it?
mm. I mean,
That's it.
can you provide the audience with context as to how many premature babies die in hospital, as a number and then also as a
Yes.
percentage?
Yes, so we are looking at about 8 million clinically low birth weight babies being born in India every year. Close to 400,000 of them are premature babies, and about 250,000 newborns die. So that's about 50% of newborns, premature babies, die every single year in India. Yeah, so
That's
that's the statistics we are looking at. Yeah.
that's incredible. I mean, how does that compare to the numbers in a first world country like the UK or the US?
So in the US, I think, so I don't have the exact numbers, but there would be about
Mm,
I think, maybe about 20,000 odd premature babies, or I'm not sure if 20,000. Yeah. So,
okay.
but then yeah. So I don't have the exact numbers for
Okay.
every country, but
Yeah.
that would be about, at least 80% lesser as compared
Yeah.
to a
Okay.
developing country. So even within India, if you see, these 400,000 premature babies that are being born, uh, close to 85% of them are born at the bottom of the pyramid. They're born at the underprivileged socioeconomic level.
Mhm.
So this is essentially mothers who are not able to provide or get proper nutrition, or having to work full time, because they have to provide for their family. They're not able to get this right supplements. So this is the essential divide. So about 15% of them are born in settings where they can afford good clinical care,
Mm,
but about 80 to 85% of them are born in settings where they cannot afford good clinical care. They cannot keep the baby inside an EQ for more than a couple of days, maybe, because they cannot afford it, and they prefer. So what happens is a two-level problems. One is when it's in a government hospital, or a hospital at the bottom of the pyramid, at the district levels or the village levels. What happens is that they once the baby is slightly stable, about 1.2 kilos, 1.5 kilos, they they try to send the baby out, because one thing is the parents cannot afford to keep the baby in for longer. So obviously
Mm,
they have to take them. And if the baby is in there, they have to keep a caretaker there. So one of the daily wage worker within the family is actually losing that income, right? So they have to be
mm,
with the baby. So they prefer to take the baby out as early as possible. And the other thing is, there's an incoming volume. You need to free up a bed space, a space, because there are more babies coming in, and that's the
mm,
volume at which the babies are being on here, right? So they have to free up that bed for a more sick baby, so that the slightly stable baby can be stepped out as early as possible.
mm.
So yeah, so it's essentially that sort of a problem that we were trying to address with our product.
Could you tell us about your product and kind of show it, please?
Yeah, so when we started out, like I was saying, it was a huge problem to address, but we had to start somewhere small. So essentially, the first thing that we were trying to do is to be able to reliably monitor a baby's vital signs and provide an alarm or some sort of an alert when
Mm,
the baby is going through a distress condition. And like I was mentioning, the clinical settings where we are talking about the baby, there is about one or two nurses taking care about 40 babies, taking care of 40 babies.
mm.
So individually, if you imagine about 20 NICU beds,
Yeah.
and there is one nurse who's taking care of about 40 babies. So we wanted to kind of create a system wherein she's able to monitor all those babies through at a single point, or a single interface where she's having these, like small, or an interface where she was able to monitor the 40 babies at the same time. And when there's an alert that has to go off, it's going off at that center, so that she's able to immediately know which baby is in distress, and she can address. So essentially, the device that we came up with is this. It's a sensor module, um, which can be wrapped in a sock-like band.
Okay.
It's just a simple sock-like band,
Yeah.
which comes in a sterile packet. And so we slip the sensor module in, and we can wrap it around the baby's foot, just like this. Can you see this?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So the
That's
sensor module sits here, and it's just like a sock that goes
yeah.
on the baby, right?
That's not a
Um,
real baby you're holding, is it?
it's not a real baby.
And so, why did you guys make it a wearable device? And
Yes.
is it? I mean, and what vital parameters are you able to track within the newborn?
Yeah. So why we had to make it a wearable was, like I was mentioning, we do not have a setup wherein all of these babies can be accommodated at a single go within an NICU, right? So,
Yeah.
like I was saying, some of them sit in the corridor, some of them are in the step down unit, some of them, and you have 2-3 babies in one incubator, one warmer, which is a scary setting, and we had to keep the device small and in such a way that it can be carried along with the baby
Mhm.
within the NICU, outside in the step down unit, wherever the baby is. But the more important thing was, the baby can be stepped down to the mother's side as early as possible, so that she can bond with her baby. She can provide that skin to skin contact,
Mm.
and she can start her breastfeeding cycle. If you see, one of the main deterrent for breastfeeding not being, up there is when the baby is inside the NICU, the mother never really bonds, or and that first few hours or first few days is very crucial for the mother to bond with her baby so that she can breastfeed,
Mm. Yeah,
right?
that's it. Yeah.
And that's a vicious cycle. So once she's not able to breastfeed, and once the baby is in the NICU, the recovery rate, or the way the baby's health improves, is actually slowed down,
Mm.
because it's clinically proven all over the world that there's no supplement to actually breastfeeding the baby, and it's clinically proven that the babies get better and healthier and gain weight faster when there is skin to skin and breastfeeding,
Mm.
right? So that was one of the things that we wanted to facilitate, because not just monitoring a baby, but then the baby needs that sort of holistic care for them to be able to get better as early as possible. And
Mm.
especially in a resource constraints and country like ours, we need to be able to use all these other resources to be making these babies healthier.
Mm,
So that was one of the key reasons why we made it into a wearable, so that there are no wires or these connections attached, and there is no way that you can actually hook the baby in,
mm.
and you can be free to be with the mother.
Yeah. And what vitals and parameters are you tracking on the newborn? I mean, what type of
Yeah.
data can you capture off the foot?
So a lot of data actually.
Yeah.
So we from that one single point on the foot, it's essentially works on based on pulse oximetry.
Okay.
So we capture the pulse rate, the blood oxygenation levels. We capture body peripheral temperature. We capture respiration rate and also perfusion index and heart rate variability. This is essentially, so we are capturing 6 vital parameters.
Hmm.
And another parameter that we also capture is the movement of the baby. So whether the baby is prone, or
Hmm.
how the baby is sleeping, or whether she's actually being, basically the position of the baby. So there are
Hmm.
multiple other ways that we can actually inform the algorithm with the help of these parameters. So we track essentially 6 vital parameters. That is all the data that a doctor needs to see to be able
Hmm.
to understand if the baby is faring well, how she's doing on the chart, and then how soon can she be discharged.
Hmm. I mean, how does the information get relayed to I don't know, would you call it a midwife that's
Yes.
looking after all these babies in the ICU?
So we call them the NICU nurses,
Yeah,
but then it's essentially the equivalent of a midwife in the UK. Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, the ICU nurse. How does the information get relayed is there a central monitoring system, and where does the data go for that one nurse to monitor all of the babies?
Right. So they're all equipped with Bluetooth, all the sensor
Mm,
modules. So what we do is we keep one screen at the nursing station.
oh wow,
Uh,
okay.
and all of these sensor modules connect over Bluetooth,
Mm,
which is the hub that we place within the NICU or within the hospital. And all of these sensor modules connect to that one screen. Sorry.
it's all right. The joys of being live.
Yeah. Sorry. So yeah, so they connect over Bluetooth to the one screen where the nurse is actually able to look at all the vitals, which are like placards on that one interface. So when there is an alert that's going off, so the critical babies or the babies who need more monitoring automatically bubble up on the top, and then there is this more stable babies are down there. So essentially, when there's an alert, the nurse is immediately able to capture that in on the screen, and then she's able to identify the baby and get there and provide the necessary intervention
Mm,
required.
that's
And
incredible.
also it connects over Wi-Fi. So we have a Wi-Fi connection for all this data to be stored over a longer period of time, so that the doctor is actually able to look at the long-term data to be able to understand if there are any possible long-term implications because of the distress conditions that the baby is going through. For example, if the baby is going through multiple episodes of apnea, so usually apnea, what happens is the baby automatically they self-correct and they get better, and all
Mm,
of these actually go unnoticed to the healthcare worker,
mm,
right? So these autocorrected apneas can be now captured in the long-term data, so that the doctor is able to look at that data. And I mean, this is all long-term, but then this is probably where we hope to get to, so that
mm,
this data is essentially useful to be able to predict any sort of further illnesses that the child could have later on. There's some
mm.
things that manifest as neurodevelopmental disorders probably 1 year down the line.
Hmm. I mean, as a company, where are you guys at right now?
Yeah, so we currently do a small batch manufacturing of the device, and we are in the process of finishing our clinical studies. So there are multiple clinical studies that we are doing with respect to understanding the efficiency of the device, the safety of the device. One of the factors that is of paramount importance to us is the safety, because obviously we are putting this device on extremely premature babies, and these are precious little creatures. Their skin is so
Mm,
fragile. So we are doing rigorous clinical studies where we understand how prolonged usage of the device is faring on newborns. So we've done a lot of bench testing and a lot of other safety measures that we've taken, and we've already tested for. And currently, they're under human trials. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, and in terms of your in terms of, I mean, we spoke about it prior to jumping on live. I mean, how has COVID affected you guys, and how have you kind of had to kind of adjust your business and your operations post COVID?
So, like I was mentioning, COVID. I mean, it's not been a unique case for us. So it was all about survival during this phase where we.
Mm,
So a lot of the work with respect to clinical studies and all that obviously slowed down. So during this process, it was more important for us to look at other areas that we would in the process of developing. So we had to relocate our resources to work more on the software, to work more on the user interface, to work with our funders, with our grant agencies. So we were in that process. So there was a lot of
mm,
relocation and reshuffling of resources. We were all working from home, obviously. So it slowed down a bit, but then the good or the silver lining I see coming out of this is that there is this paradigm shift in the care seeking behavior of patients, which otherwise would have was climbing up the mountain for us, which is building that kind of um, mentality within the population is quite difficult. But now people are preferring to get care or seek care at home. They are now being more open to using technology to be able to monitor their own health within their home. So, and that's obviously filtering down to maternal and newborn care too.
mm.
So we are hoping that that part of the puzzle will probably be solved at the end of the COVID situation that we are in right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In an uber optimistic world where you have the funding and you have all the resources you need, what do you think? What do you think you could achieve as a company, and as a company from a commercial standpoint and also from a product standpoint within the next, say, 24 months?
So from the product standpoint, we're hoping to actually finish our clinical studies and to be able to get to the point where we can start large scale manufacturing. So one of the things that a lot of other countries and India is going through is to be able to be more self-sufficient with respect to manufacturing and with respect to sourcing of your parts and all the other raw material that is required. So that's one piece of the puzzle that we are hoping to kind of solve within
Mm,
the next 24 months. And we have to figure out a lot of these manufacturing issues that otherwise we would be relying on something like a China or Taiwan for.
mm,
So that's a big piece of the puzzle that we still have to kind of get to and finish doing that. And then the other thing also is to be able to survive. So we will be starting our process of raising venture fund in the next couple of months again. So to be
mm,
able to get to that, and the clinical data that we are going to generate and we are in the process of generating is a huge plus point for us, because that's what the doctors are looking at with respect to adoption of the device.
mm.
So yes, I think slowly and steadily we'll get there.
How much are you looking to raise, and what are you hoping the extra VC money will help facilitate?
Yeah, so in the next round of funding, we're hoping to raise 300,000 US dollars. That's the round of funding we're raising, and within this, we are so that's like I was mentioning, there are two main things that we need to get to. One is manufacturing of our large scale manufacturing of our devices and the outreach. So with respect to putting the device out there, with respect to sales and marketing, things are going to change a lot more now, because obviously the one-to-one interaction has gone down quite a bit, and
Mm,
the marketing piece of the of commercialization is something that we have to kind of sort of reinvent.
mm.
So that's one thing that we will be figuring out, and we will be scaling up that with the rest, with the funding money will be with the money we'll be raising. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And uh, I mean, this is this is an incredibly difficult problem you guys are trying to solve. I mean, and on a human level, I mean, what gives you the most gratitude and fulfillment for the work that you do? Because it's clearly fulfilling, but extremely difficult.
Right. So it's a long journey, especially when we're talking about medical devices in hardware.
Mm,
The product cycles are long, obviously. So the when you want to see a lot of on ground impact, it's a long journey, and you have to keep yourself sustained for that long. So uh, we one of the ways we actually keep in touch is we keep in touch with our users and the parents and the newborns quite often. Like that was what we used to be doing. Now obviously took a break, but then we'll be getting back to it when we see the way that the parents react when they're able to hold the baby. When the you have to see a mother's face when she sees her baby hooked on to so many machines and with so many wires on it. To
mm,
be able to hold it, it's such a scary feeling.
mm,
And when you get rid of them for a bit and actually give that very, very small child to a mother, the feeling that she goes through is incredible. To be able to bond with her baby, to be able to hold her baby at that time. So I think seeing things like that, seeing things like the doctors reacting so well to be able to and increase their efficiency, increase the way that they improve the efficiency of the work that they're doing, and actually seeing it help them gives a lot of gratification. I think
mm.
the thought that we can see this in a large scale format is something that actually keeps us going. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, skin to skin is so essential, and to a massive extent, your device kind of enables that because it's it's a wearable device, and obviously because it's Bluetooth enabled,
Yeah.
the mother's able to bond with the baby straight away. I can imagine that having a massive impact because there's a lot of talk here in the UK about depression amongst new mothers as well. So, I mean,
Sure.
being able to get that uh, skin to skin must be really, really important, especially not only for the baby but for the mother, especially in that vulnerable period. Over the course of a year since the baby's been born. Um, I think that, yeah.
And also another thing going down the line, when you're looking at care, taking care of your newborns, there's a lot of sleepless nights that you spend, trying to just, especially when you have a premature baby that you just got home.
Mm,
You are loaded with instructions. You have so many things you have to follow, and in the current situation, they ask you, in India, they ask you to put a pulse oximeter, these finger pulse oximeters that are made for adults. They ask them to
mm,
put them on the newborn's foot for a bit, and then take vitals every 2 hours. So you're loaded with instructions like this, and obviously you've already gone through a lot of physical and mental transformation, and uh, coming home and being able to do this to your baby and taking care of it, and you just deprived of sleep, and any sort of your brain's just not at rest at all. And
mm,
that kind of actually feeds into a lot of these postpartum depression cases that we see, especially here.
mm.
So with this, we are hoping that some part of it can be addressed, because now at the back of your head that the baby has something on which will alert me when there's something wrong with my baby.
Yeah, yeah. And your device is for hospitals. I
Yes,
mean,
we are in the long term. We are hoping to actually, take this home,
yeah,
and
I was just going to ask
probably
that.
one of the situations that we have to start, fast tracking thanks to COVID,
Yeah.
because you're just not going to be inside of a hospital for a long time unless and until your life depends on it. So,
Yeah.
yep.
I think that kind of wraps up the interview. I mean, is there anything you kind of want to shout out? I mean, you are raising venture capital money, $300,000, in a few months. Are you hiring? Yeah.
So currently we are not hiring, but then
Okay.
we are looking to. We would be in a couple of months more. So that's it for now. And anybody interested to sort of collaborate, we'd be more than free and welcome. Thank you so much for having me here, and it was great sharing our story with you. Thank you.
No worries. I really appreciate you jumping on this morning. Thank you so much.
Thank
Yeah,
you so
and
much.
have a great weekend. Take care.
You too. Thank you. Bye bye.